allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. How are you? So, I just want to thank everybody for being here. You may wonder what I'm doing here on a Thursday morning, not in DC. We are in our district court period. And so, home for me is Van Meter. Third district is 16 counties, so I've been doing some town halls and some other visits. And this is what I like to do. This is how I learn about what's on your mind. When big issues come up in Washington, D.C., I'll make sure that I have perspectives, and sometimes it's a lot of different perspectives about issues. So it's great to see you. So the way we do this, we just, as you know, we got a bucket, and then folks can write out their questions and cards, and then I ask somebody to reach in and grab something.
Can I get mine?
You can, well, if you love to. You can't. Here you go. This is yours, that's funny. This says proposed hog buildings that are unwanted close to cities, funding for small local governments for DNR issues such as sewer and water improvement. That's from Rick. Does Rick want to expound on that at all?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Here recently, we'll start with the hog barn issue. I know there's quite a few in the audience that this is quite a concern with them. It's not like it used to be with like dirt hogs, you know, the local farmer have, 10, 20, 30 dirt hogs because it was common practice. Nowadays it seems like there's quite a few hog confinements, that are out in the country owned by somebody not locally. And, we live in a rural community and we do have to deal with some pretty funky smells, be it chemicals or animals. But maybe just getting a little bit out of hand as far as how many of these things are going up and how close to rural residents in small towns. I didn't know. I know there's pretty strict guidelines as far as DNR permits for watershed issues and ground contamination and stuff like that. Has this been an issue on your table yet as far as any more?
Well, it's not been an issue at the federal level regarding some of these zoning and local decisions that are made where hog confinements are built. I mean, that is purely a really local issue, and I believe it needs to stay a local issue. I don't think, regarding if it's this or any other kind of local issue, I don't think federal government, Congress, somebody from New York or California should be voting on what we do with our land here in that sense. So, my advice to you is to make sure that you are getting your voice heard with your local legislators at the state capitol in Des Moines, and your governor as well, your board of your county board, your local folks. So that's where I would direct you to. And there's also something in here about funding for local governments, sewer and water improvements.
Yeah, and that's every small town throughout the United States, or any large town for that matter of fact, are having this issue of years. From small towns, a lot of the good old boy ways. We just whatever it takes, just take care of it, or if it's not broke, don't fix it. Well, there's all of a sudden here in the last 20 years, we've had to do major upgrades, either due to system failure or to state and federal regulations on how sewage and drinking water needs to be taken care of. A lot of the small towns, we go with low or no interest rate loans, but even that is pretty overwhelming for, say, small towns, riverton, Farragut, Hamburg, towns that are considerably smaller than what they were 20 years ago. I mean, for a lot of the government agency money going out elsewhere, we need to do something to help local governments to make sure our drinking water is safe, to keep our groundwater, safe from sewage. Believe it or not, we still live in a day and age where people will dump raw sewage on the ground.
So water quality issues and infrastructure are two issues that we're hearing more and more about, right? So we've seen at the state level, action just earlier this week on water quality issues. And at the federal level with the Farm Bill, and I'm on the Appropriations Committee, Subcommittee on Agriculture, I have a bill called the Water Quality Conservation Act, which enhances EQIP funding, Environmental Quality Incentive Program, to target watersheds. And for decisions there to be made here. So that's a water quality issue. Because if there's federal dollars available, I want to get them home. I want them to be here, and I want the people here to make the decisions on how to use them. So then, just on water systems, wastewater, those kind of things, the president is at Congress. We're talking about infrastructure. And when we hear about infrastructure, what does that mean? It's defined differently by people, right? We have different thoughts. It could be more than just roads and bridges. That's a traditional thought, and we need to make sure that our roads and bridges are safe and we can get commodities to market and that kind of thing, safe for our families. But people are talking about making sure that, I'm talking about this with the head of Office of Management and Budget, Nick Mulvaney. He's kind of the president's budgetary guy, about making sure that infrastructure package also encompasses and includes rural America and not just our big cities. Granted, they have some needs there, but we've got plenty of needs here as well. And so we're waiting for more details on that, but I want to make sure that this is more than just roads and bridges, that there's funding there as well, in partnerships with localities, whether it's climate activity bonds or some other public-private partnership, loans or grants, because rural Iowa can't be forgotten, rural America shouldn't be forgotten. And so, rural broadband, making sure that our ports and our airports and railroad lines, people are talking about things like that as well. I'm conscious of the issue regarding water quality and making sure we have that infrastructure as well. You want to comment any further on this?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
Thank you.
But also make sure that you know the folks at the state capitol as well. Here, folks.
Can I comment on that?
I'm gonna let you. Sure.
All right.
Although we
Okay.
got a system, but
As far as the Farm Bill and the USDA subsidizations to Fremont County, with the hog confinements and stuff like that, Fremont County in 2016 received $10.2 million in subsidies in 2016. Only 1.8 million went towards conservation programs. Okay, so basically what the USDA is doing is subsidizing large corporations, and we as taxpayers are paying for their profit gains through Fremont County. It's costing us, our population is declining due to these subsidized large factory farms. So, and then also they're not flipping the bill on their conservation side. So if the federal government could tighten their policies on these subsidies and have a little bit more oversight on what they do, because there's not really much transparency of how they spend that money.
you're about transparency and conservation, CRP funds?
Yes.
Okay. FSA, do they have a list of all the CRP funds that come to the counties?
I'm sure they do,
I think
because
they do. But
I got all this information off the internet, and it's a EWG, Environmental Working Group.
Sure.
Working Group.
Yep.
Okay, and anybody can go there and get that information. But that seems like a lot of money that we're flipping the bill for when we have no say in how those funds are spent as far as the conservation side is. And basically there's 4 DNR guys that oversee this and permit it, and they have like 19 other counties that they got to go through in District 4 and police all the hog confinements, and there's just not enough DNR agents to do their job and everything. It's just so
don't run out of here after this.
okay.
I'd like to get more of your thoughts and information so that we can set up a phone call with our agriculture person on staff and know that the farm bill is being reauthorized. And so this is helpful to have these conversations. And the reason why the farm bill is always reauthorized because of practices, we learned things from previous programs. We've got new technologies. I mean, precision agriculture wasn't something that was talked about, you know, a decade or two ago, or really some other terms as well, precision conservation. So I know that a lot of people have concerns about the CRP program. They wanted to make sure that there's transparency there and there's flexibility there with some certain accountability to make sure that those funds are used in the right way. So make sure we have your information. Thanks. Thank you for coming. I'm just going to lay this burden on you, Joe.
Yeah.
So, this is from Martha. The investigation into election interference in the election continues. It appears that the questioning phase on the independent counsel's investigation may be approaching a close. Please update us on the status of these investigations. Well, I haven't, first of all, you have Mr. Mueller's investigation, and then you have some committee investigations as well. And those are still ongoing. I haven't heard that they're nearing a close. I think the general thought is most people want eventually to close, but they don't want it to close prematurely because we want to make sure that we have all the facts and the findings, and whether that's this Mueller's investigation or the committee's investigations as well. So let the chips fall where they may. The House Intelligence Committee, you probably heard about, there's a 4-page memo that they have that I've read, and I think needs to be released to the public, just so there's no guessing of what it is or what it isn't.
Why are they not?
Well, the Intelligence Committee deals with classified information, so they were going to have to vote to release this to unclassified. So. But I believe in that transparency and that people should see these, and the American people can make up their minds for their own with that debate out there. So I can't tell you what's in it, but I think it should be made public.
Sure.
Do you have a question?
The memo is it's just written by the Republicans, so how can that be a fair memo? It should be written by all the members, or from both parties, because it's a one-sided. If I'm going to tell something, I can pull out just what I want it to say. And it needs to be both the Democrats and the Republicans together coming out with this memo.
So that's why I think it needs to be released, so there's no guessing and people can see for themselves what's in it and weigh that on whether it's a partisan document or not. But you know, the information has come from the investigation that has been public by the Department of Justice, the FBI, and others. So I think it's just good to have that transparency, so there's not guessing. Did you see these pension plans stepping up as they should to give you all the information you need to pass the Butch-Lewis Act? Or do you think government's flailing because there's not enough information to show that it will even work? So the Butch-Lewis Act is a piece of legislation, and if anybody here wants to expound on that, that's going to help right some wrongs regarding some pensions for the boosters, and some language. A bill has been introduced that's bipartisan to address this or work to help address it. There's some other efforts as well. One Big Mind, Senator Grassley has one to try to make sure that this doesn't ever happen again to the Central States Pension Fund, and that is the mission to try to do.
Any pension fund.
Yeah, any pension fund to get that forensic audit, which a lot of people want to have. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the GAO still hasn't released.
March.
They say March.
February or March.
So, your folks have been doing a good job of educating Congress, because I've seen a lot of the shirts you're wearing the past week and a half. And if you want to show, sure.
To give you guys,
Go ahead.
is that okay?
Yep.
And I apologize, I love your town, by the way, it's beautiful. I'm Mary Packer with Protect Our Pitch of Iowa, Nebraska. In 1982, the federal government pulled the money out of the hands of the Teamsters for mafia ties. You guys probably remember this, often disappeared, blah, blah, blah. And gave it to Wall Street to manage. Now, if anybody knows how Wall Street manages money and what happened in 2008, it was a travesty to my father and these retirees. My father is no longer with the union. Some of the grain bins that sit around this area, my dad worked for Bail and helped deliver those before he got on with the union. But he worked his whole life. I never knew him until after he retired. And he worked hard. Instead of getting raises, he opted out to get more money into his pension. And now his pension's going insolvent. Because in 2008, it lost $9 billion alone. So they tried to cut, these fund managers tried to pass a law in government to cut their pension, 70%, 50 to 70%. We managed to get that halted, but we have a pension fund that's going insolvent. So we are working to get legislation in place to protect my dad, to create loans, just like the banks did. But we're gonna pay those loans back. And just so you know, the government received $321 billion in fines from Wall Street for what happened in 2008. It is not taxpayer money, $321 billion in fines. We're not even asking for remotely that. So, I'm done.
It's to save other pensions, because 401ks and that.
This bill would also save the miners, the electricians. There's a lot of
Plumbers.
There's a lot of pensions of these workers that are in trouble, and it will help save them also. It's not just my dad and the Teamsters Union. There's a lot of other people that are scared and desperate, and they are attacking the old. And I'm trying just to protect it.
So you're doing a great job on Capitol Hill, and then I think on the ground, and you should continue to do that. I know that there's, you've got the Western States Pension Fund.
And that one's
pretty
doing,
solid, pretty good.
yeah.
That's in real
You know
great
what?
shape, but they
I
don't.
found my thrill on Capitol Hill. Sorry.
Don't try to
I'm sorry.
say. No, the Western Conference is sitting.
You guys, it's very
with
frustrating.
40
Sometimes
billion.
you just gotta make a joke about it,
And
because it's
our
very
fund-
frustrating.
Our fund's down to 15 billion. But you think the Western Conference come in and say, hey, we'll help you, but
Dad,
I
but
don't
they
know.
won't, so.
So you're hearing right now, as we are going through budget negotiations, about bipartisan efforts to try to create a loan program.
Is it gonna be in the omnibus, you think?
I can't give you any guarantees. So many people do that and break promises, but I
Is
can't
the
promise
funds
you
getting
an outcome
you
of the
information?
process.
Is the funds giving you information? If the fiduciaries of these funds are not giving you guys information to be able to make an objective decision, then how is this gonna pass?
You make a great point, and so that's why we're trying to bring transparency to what happened, so it won't happen again. But that alone doesn't solve the problem, just knowing there's a shortfall, and there's bipartisan effort to create a loan program, and we'll see where that goes.
Okay.
And I have talked to the Speaker of the House about this issue personally, and so he's aware of it, not just because of me and other members, but because Central State is his state as well.
Well, thank you, and
thank you, sir.
thank you for your support and helping us. Ready?
This is from Jim, Board of Security, first no amnesty. Where is Jim? There you go.
I'd like to see the border secured completely, stop the drug trafficking, the human trafficking. I think that's a priority. And these so-called DACA recipients, they should go through the process like any other immigrant to become American. I don't see a problem with that. Let them apply for citizenship, go through the process. But the blanket amnesty, these people won't work. That's just to open the door. That's happened when Reagan did it. Give blanket amnesty and then secure the border. So look where we're at now. So I don't see a problem with them being, becoming Americans, but do it the right way. That's all I'm asking. Let's secure the border. I think that's a priority. And do something about these gang members. There was a woman killed in Omaha, 10 minutes into New Jersey, by an illegal, drunk, 19-year-old from Mexico. And she had ties to Riverton. Her dad was Roger Otto. He had the Honda dealership up there in the 60s. And he moved to Glenwood, had a Chrysler dealership. I went to school with his youngest daughter. But then we had Sarah Root. She was killed by an illegal. There was a 92-year-old woman. The illegal broke into her home, was gonna rob her, beat her up, and raped her. She was 92.
92 and she passed away.
Yeah. Her daughter found her the next morning with that illegal laying her next door. No, some of them are probably good people. But they need to be dealt with. And they need to apply for citizenship. They need to be checked just like everybody else. I just think they do this the right way. But the blanket amnesty, I think that's wrong. That's just gonna invite more.
So we're having a great discussion about this in America right now. In our
There's
town
another
halls.
card in there with my question,
Okay, is
in the bucket.
on this issue.
Yeah, do you want it now? Or
No, maybe with what I say right now, we'll answer some of that, but I want to address this
Okay,
question. Yeah.
yeah, you may answer it.
So there's a lot going on right now in conversation with DACA, Dreamers, border security, our various visa programs that are out there. So much so that we had the government shutdown over this issue. That's a whole other issue as to why we're doing continuing resolutions and doing patchwork Band-Aid funding mechanisms from the federal government because we need certainty of a full fiscal year. But we had the government shut down. It was primarily over the DACA Dreamer issue. I think most Americans on both sides of the aisle have a certain amount of sympathy for these kids who came over as youngsters. A lot of them are in school. Some of them are in college, working right now. Some are even in the military serving us right now. And there's a desire to find a way to give these folks a legal status, but match that up as well to real border security to make sure that this isn't just a deal, but to make sure that this is a solution and that this doesn't happen again. So I think there's on both sides of the aisle, people want to be compassionate and merciful and allow these people to stay. I think we have the issue as well, what does that mean? Is it just a legal status? You're here, but you're not an American citizen? Or is there some kind of pathway to that? And how long would that be? Certainly, wherever anybody has come over here illegally, wherever they're from, whether it's Russia or Brazil or China or Canada, if they're violent felons, we don't want them here. It's not what we need. Now, you talked about a few instances of some who've come over here illegally. Sarah Root being a young lady whose life was taken. We passed Sarah's law earlier in this Congress last year. I'm hoping that is part of the development package. I know that folks on the Senate side as well are going to try to push for that. But we want to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And so we're having debates. There's a gang of 6 over in the Senate who have some ideas. They're bipartisan. They mean whatever the Senate passes doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to support it. I have certain principles that we want to make sure that I want to make sure are there, and there's going to be different bills in the House. But I do appreciate the president when he says, we can't just leave this program and these kids in limbo. We can't just not address real border security. And so he said to Congress, deal with this once and for all and get it done, because it didn't belong in the executive branch.
Should have been a separate thing. Should have been voted as a separate thing.
Yeah, it should be in Congress.
Yes, sir.
So I don't know if I'm going to take your next card, but you want to follow up on this?
Well, my question, I had the background in my question. It's a well-written question, that's really good. But the question part was, what kind of legal status do you foresee, and will you pledge to protect the dreamers, those Americans, from deportation?
So I want them to be able to come out of the shadows, have that legal status where they're here, they're not having to worry about another round of application, that kind of thing. It depends on what it is married with as well, with some other issues that some other people want. I can't tell you what's gonna be in the final bill, but I do wanna make sure the border is secure. I think they have to be together. And people are gonna have to give a
And
little bit of.
if they're not, will you protect the Dreamers? If border security is not a portion of that legislation, would you support protection for the Dreamers? Will you pledge to support that?
I want to support the Dreamers. I've pledged to work with anyone and everyone to help give legal status and border security. But I think they gotta be together. Otherwise, I think you have to have one, can't have one without the other on that. And we'll see what has been introduced, what's debated, and
Yeah, I think
Keep it
it's
tight.
a tricky issue because I don't think that most of the population understands what all goes into getting legal status. And I just don't think they do.
well, legal status to me means you're not a citizen, and so you don't have,
Mhm.
but you are living without the fear of the federal government deporting you.
But it's pretty tough to get into America, actually.
Well, most of
It's a
those,
lengthy process and lengthy and expensive process to,
She's right.
I mean, even to get in and get a green card and stuff. It is
it
not.
can take double-digit years, it can take 12 years.
It's not hard to get in America. You can go to Canada and come down a gravel road right into America. I've done it, I haul steel buildings.
Okay,
It's
Dad.
not hard to get into the United
Dad,
States.
come back.
I guarantee you that.
What do you think about farm factories, Joan?
Yeah,
So this kind of touches on what Rick was talking about.
and Terry,
Yeah.
Terry Graham.
You know, I'm a big fan of the family farm, you know, the small farmer. My great-grandparents came to Iowa in 1881 to Pocahontas County and settled near Marina and Eagle and farm. And there's still a little bit of the family farm up there today.
We have a gentleman from, out of state that comes and puts up factories. And, I just don't, I think it's political. And I think it's big political. We called the NR, they said, call here, we'll call here, we'll call here. Kim Reynolds, you know, I sent her an email, haven't heard that, nobody answers. I think it's really political. I think they have, Iowa's gonna have pigs and we're gonna trade them, that's what I think. And I think that it's a shame because I grew up on a family farm. And my dad used to have his hogs out the pasture. Just brought them in when we had pigs. But of the properties that we have, the homes that we have, it's probably the biggest investment we have in our life. My husband has his business on our home property. We built that. And if hogs move in, if I have to smell it, it goes along with the water quality, we'll move. But, and what a shame. And then what's your property worth? If you have a factory right across the road from you.
But this is not a federal issue.
I know, I wonder if it is or isn't.
Well,
I mean, I
think
don't
those
wanna
zoning,
doubt you, but I think why,
well, those, you know, local zoning issues, are not of the federal government. And I don't think you want them to be of the federal government. 'Cause you're-
I don't, but I just feel like it's political and I think it was higher from the state.
It's not, no one has ever approached me and said, hey, how do we get into that?
Right,
Those
right,
are
I
large farms, and
understand.
where would it be, or anything like that? Or as to lobby to change any kind of regulation or bill. To do
You live
that.
in Iowa, right?
Yeah, I'm in Van Meter, in Wells County. So are there any legislative copies coming up with your local people? I mean, that's who you really have to.
I don't think so, not that I know of. They just.
Any legislative copies coming up saying that you've heard of them?
There were the last 2 weeks. One was one in Page County,
We
and
had,
one in.
There
we had
should be
David
some.
Johnson,
Mills
we
County.
had David Johnson come down.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
But, I just, said no received it. So, yeah. And then it goes in with the water quality too, and the air quality. But we could, in our own little county, we could zone to not do this anymore, to not be overrun by hogs. Jerry? Zoning.
Well, a lot of the zoning is based upon expansion, your ability to expand as a city. And right now, our county is on a 7% decline because of instances like this, hog confinements.
I was up in Franklin County and everywhere I got out of the car, it stunk. It didn't matter.
What?
If I was at a gas station, I was at a shopping mall, we were eating, the whole county stunk. And somebody said, well, they're small, they don't have a lot of people, so the hog confinements are all gathered
There was
there.
one next to the high
And there's
school
only a
in
2-mile range.
Latimer in 1978, I can tell you that.
Mr. Young,
Within a mile range where they weren't supposed to, wasn't it? They set it up with a mile.
You can't get
Well, they'll
in your
go to
yard.
the mile and a quarter or mile and 1 foot mark and put one up there, and then right across the road, they'll go there. So they're going around the back door trying to get through that stuff. How can you stop them from doing that?
Doesn't talk to you about it. Nobody's responsible for it, nobody. We've tried everything.
Well, can I just say something? I'm on
Sure.
Farragut City Council, and we were fighting the hog confinement. And it is the state legislators, they have got to make
That's right.
regulations.
They're trying to.
And they had a chance in August, I think, and they voted it down because David Johnson, who was on the regular, set up this. It was for the family farmer, and the corporate farmer has figured out how to come through the
And I
back
know
door.
That's how
Grassland's
we're doing it.
really pushing
Yeah.
for
Got to have it.
subsidies to family farmers, not people that
Not non-owned.
come in, yes,
Real farmers.
right.
So is there
But
anything in the
Airbnb
farm
is-
bill that, I don't know much about the farm bill, that's why I'm not in politics, is because I can't understand the farm bill. Is there, I mean, is there anything doable in that would give anything?
I think you gotta be very careful if you start giving.
Oh, I'm sure,
Jane, you're right, it is the state legislature.
And you have to call them and you keep calling.
can't- it doesn't do any good.
I realize that, and that's when we have to then,
Has to be a way.
I think you guys ought to do the constitutional thing, your rally together, get yourself
We're
around
trying to
together,
do that.
and get down to Des Moines and fight for yourselves.
And we try to do that. But
The TNFO in 68, they were pouring milk down the street. They'd all stuck together, they'd run America. They would have.
it's gonna be too late.
You have any further comments on?
No, I think I've got what I thought I would get.
Because once you got them.
We're gonna get to the wall. So Jane, what are you doing to improve health insurance and making it affordable? My husband and I are spending over 56% of our income on healthcare insurance for 2,000 a year just to have insurance.
yeah, it's $42,000 a year just to have health insurance. And we lost our health insurance when the state came in and closed Farragut. We were retired, and we had retired under the auspice that we could still buy our health insurance through the school. And I know this is kind of a state issue, but the federal healthcare has got to be regulated, made affordable. Because $42,000 a year just to have health insurance is absurd.
So you have the Affordable Care Act. Some people call it Obamacare. The president calls it Obamacare. And that's been in effect for many years. And so it's not lived up to what it was sold as. But I have met people who it's helped.
Yeah, right.
And you kind of, families who've never had some coverage before, and you kind of share those victories with them. You're happy. And then you meet folks like yourself, or others whose premiums have gone through the roof, or they've lost their health insurance, or their deductibles so high that they don't know, they don't bother going to the doctor sometimes. And so the question is, how do we make this work for everybody? And so that's where we're at right now, right? And so we have tried just the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare alone, and we tried an approach to get an approach. It was a partisan approach as well, a Republican approach through Congress, and couldn't get that done. I think cooler heads have prevailed, but it doesn't mean the problem has gone away. You know, Congress still needs to deal with this. And so, you know, I want to try to figure out a way to bring more insurance companies into the marketplace where people start having a choice and they're competing against one another. I think states do need a certain flexibility because New York is not like Iowa. I mean, we kind of talked about the difference between states and the innovations they have and delivery. We talked about transparency in pricing. Does that help bring down the cost of medicine? But there's other issues too. Across state lines, can you start buying insurance across state lines as well? Start doing some group plans, such as what an employer does for their employees. Can people buy together, whether it's plumbers union or teachers or librarians or bankers or whatever, group together and be able to group purchase. So this issue is not going anywhere because I hear about it everywhere. There's discussions in Congress in a bipartisan way that are they're quiet right now. But I think when this issue comes up again, and it needs to be bipartisan.
What about Medicare for all? I mean, that would simplify it. I mean, in a way, it would give everybody the same opportunity. Why? Because you do this, you got a better chance at taking care of your health. Then my job is this, and I don't get insurance, and I don't have the same opportunities to have good health care. Why can't we have Medicare for all?
So everybody in the country would be under Medicare, and so that would take away veterans' health care. It would take people on Medicare today who it's meant for would be, where would they go? Would they have priority? The group policies, what would happen with that? You mandate that they go away? I don't think that's the way to go.
But isn't it better to have everybody under a healthcare umbrella than letting people go out on their own and not have health care?
That's what affordable health care is
Because
supposed to
then
be.
pharmaceutical companies lose money,
Yeah,
and they own too much of Congress.
yeah. I mean, that could get me into something else, but but I think, I mean, healthcare, everybody, what, because of your job or wherever, why should you not be able to live a decent life?
Well, I don't think there's any argument that everybody wants people to have access to affordable quality care. Just how do you deliver that? How do you ensure that? That's the big debate we're having right now. And how do we keep that price low? How do we ensure people can have immediate access? I think if you do Medicare for all, you have some real issues regarding access to care because generally those who are worse off are going to. I just think that rationing comes into effect, and we've seen that elsewhere. So I think we have to be really careful with that.
Can I ask a question real quick, just to humor me? You said the Affordable Health Care, you've met people that's benefited.
Yeah.
Give us some situations, because I believe you. I'm
Yeah.
sure that people have benefited from it. Pretty sure there's nobody probably within a 100-mile radius of here that has.
Yeah.
Thank goodness. I'm sorry you're paying that much. I don't feel so bad because one, self-employed.
Yeah.
I've got 4 children, and if it wasn't for, Hawkeye insurance through the state of Iowa,
Yeah.
my children would not have any insurance.
Chip.
I couldn't pay, $3,500 a month for health insurance for myself and my 4 children. It's not possible. So just seeing anybody that would benefit from it that were not on any sort of state aid or assistance, Medicaid, Medicare, I don't know.
There are some people who just didn't have coverage, period.
No, and I couldn't. before the Affordable Health Care Act, or Obamacare, come into place, I had 3 children I couldn't get insurance for without paying way out the nose, with just crazy numbers. 2 of them, haven't had any health issues since they were 1 year old. My oldest still continues to have some health issues, and he could not, absolutely would not be able to get any health insurance for him. But my 2 younger ones, 12 years ago, they haven't had any medical history since then, I could. That is the only thing Obamacare or Affordable Health Care did for me, but I still couldn't afford it. They made insurance available, no way in hell I can afford it.
And that's the problem. Obamacare did a lot of really, I think, they've done a lot of really good things. I mean, I didn't have to pay for my mammogram.
You pay a penalty every quarter, and thank goodness that's away. You pay the penalty every quarter, which is cheaper for me to not have health insurance and pay the penalty than it is to have health insurance and just roll the
Until
dice.
something dreadful happens and it wipes you out because you didn't
That's what they have
insurance.
auctioneers for, sell your stuff.
They don't even steal the stuff out of the storage unit.
Out of all those penalties, that 80% of those penalties were put on people making $50,000 or less.
Yeah, right.
So,
You know, in the states, why can't all these states get together and run the same kind of deal as Massachusetts, Hawaii? Oh, we got some kind of a deal, why can't they all get together if they're gonna be run by the United States of America? Why aren't they all the same? I never figured this out.
every state's different.
And we got different insurance laws and all that.
Population-wise,
Yeah, but they should be.
but I do think that states should have more flexibility.
Yeah, but
Jim?
Pull mine out this time.
This is another immigration, is that you? Okay.
I'll give you one.
What are your thoughts with young immigrants being so deported? So we kind of talked about the dream. I want to hear your thoughts.
My personal opinion is, when I was in Mount Pleasant, we had a family from Venezuela, and they came to this country when they were having their revolution, and these kids are not citizens, but they've spent their whole life in Iowa, and because of their status, they can't get student loans. Bright people, good people, and the whole conversation of deporting families that are here, to me, is appalling. And I know everybody wants the wall built. You know what? It's billions and billions of dollars at a time in our budget. I'm not saying you don't need a wall, I'm not supporting a wall, but there may be better use for that money when we can't even make a balanced budget in this country. So that's my opinion. I respect others, but it's my opinion.
So for the Dreamer and DACA people, nobody's talking about deporting. It's about legal status, married up with border security. And border security doesn't necessarily mean a wall from the Gulf of Mexico to San Diego. I've been down to the border, and in certain areas you're going to need different ways to secure the border. But probably heard me say it, but in San Diego you need more Coast Guard, more horseback. In Cochise County, Arizona, some drones, ground penetrating radar in some areas because there's tunneling. You may need some wall in some areas and some fencing. But I think we need to depend on governors and border patrol agents who know that border to tell us how to solve the problem in any given sector, and it's not going to be a wall in those places, actually.
I got a suggestion. I was a member of the Iowa National Guard. Every year we do 2 weeks of training. So we go to different parts of the country. Why can't we train on the southern border? And help the border. It's already paid for. It's already in the budget. And give them actual training in some of the difficult areas.
Got it, yeah.
I mean, all you gotta do is put equipment down there and then they can use this equipment.
I'm going to write that down, but
But like I said, I was in the garden every year, 2 weeks, we would go, we went to Minnesota, I got a great nephew in Garden County, been to Wyoming and Louisiana.
You have to have some kind of agreement and compact with Minnesota National Guard to do that.
There are a lot of them coming in.
Well, I mean,
They
that's just where we went. They had a camp up there, we went up there. But every guard unit trains every year for 2 weeks, and spread that out, you could, in tough areas where they need extra border patrol, they would be training, and I just think it'd be a win-win.
Yeah. I don't know
Because
that,
if these illegal gun runners come up there next to a guy in uniform, carrying an AR, I ain't gonna cross them.
I don't know that that's not happening, maybe it is with some National Guards.
But I think it'd be a win-win. You get training and it's already paid for. I mean, it's already in the budget.
Will require if that's happening.
I think that's a hell of an idea, but if you show some sort of force on a border with your troops, with weapons, don't get me wrong, I love your idea, love it. But you show some sort of force on another country's border, there might be some questioning. Plus, any cartel issues, they need to streamline their product in the United States. And I'm sure they will probably, unless we're sitting there blowing them away with pig stuff, I think they're gonna keep.
Well, I'm saying there's areas where the border patrol can't go.
Yeah.
Some of the rougher, I mean, that's good training.
Oh, I agree.
Because if you're going overseas, you're in some rough areas, Afghanistan, Iraq, or some places, it'd just be a good actual training situation. And they would have an actual enemy to look for. You use your technology, your drones, it would cover a lot of training for it. And it's already paid for. It's already in the budget.
Mary, you want to comment on that? And then
I
we'll go to
do.
the next question.
One of the things that has baffled me, and I see it with ERISA law, I see it with DACA, these things wouldn't have even been an issue had laws on the books been enforced years ago. If you get laws, let's start enforcing them, please. Let's not go rogue or ignore them, because both the pensions and DACA, to me, are a problem because laws are simply not followed. And I think Katrina should stay here. The ones that have gone through school, the ones you can track and know about, the thing is if they haven't gone to school or if they haven't been tracked, how are you gonna know where they stand in all of this? That's just my opinion.
So the issue regarding laws, you have laws, and if you don't like them, you try to change them, right? But we are not enforcing our laws, and I can tell you a couple big issues that we've heard about, particularly is our drug laws, where we have some states that have decided to just legalize it within their own state boundaries, while federally it is against the law. And so there's got to be some reconciling there, some kind of consequences, or change the law. But I think if you start getting in a pattern of not obeying laws, it makes it easier to break another one and say, what does it matter if they're not being enforced? I think that's a dangerous road to go on. So, two left. Why are the Republicans trying to discredit the Mueller-Russia investigation? This is Jane.
And there have been many senators come out and say things, and that scares me, that senators and representatives do, that we need to let Mueller do his job.
I agree. And so when you say why are the
Republicans.
Please.
Not all
That's a big
Republicans,
blanket.
I shouldn't have, yeah.
And, not everybody has
Right,
that same notion or thought. So.
Right.
But there are some.
yeah.
And I think that you should let the investigation go on.
Will
And
the
findings will be
Republicans
the
support
findings.
what, if it comes out that the conspiracy, there was obstruction of justice, there's all of these different possibilities, and collusion with the Russians, will the Republicans back the outcome?
So I can't speak for everybody,
No,
but
but
I
I
also
mean-
can't speak about hypotheticals either.
Uh-huh.
Let's get the investigation finished. All of them, right? The committees as well, and the House and the Senate,
Right,
and the Mueller investigation. And let the chips fall where they may, make it transparent to the American people. And I think most people want to get this done sooner rather than later, but not prematurely, right?
right.
That's you.
I think we talked over some
Yeah.
of that.
Who decides on giving permit for a hog confinement station?
Kind of wondering where it starts. I know I talked to Terry at the city supervisor, county supervisors, and that there's some things that they've looked at. But I think when it's all said and done, the final, is that the DNR? Is that how the permits go through? Like, that's what I'm trying to see.
Jane, do you have a little background in this? Or Terry? Because I know that it's not the federal government.
DNR has oversight
Right,
on,
yeah.
on the hog
Yeah,
confinement.
yeah, and they really can't stop them either, can they?
And as long as they're following all the codes, Iowa codes and stuff like that, but there's so many loopholes in the hog confinement issues.
So it sounds like if it's within the parameters of what's in the code, then ultimately the DNR has to check the box.
Yeah.
But see,
So to deal with it, you have to deal with the code, and that's your state legislators. How you have to influence that, and you should petition, you know, your First Amendment right to petition your government at all levels on that.
okay, but we have very few DNR agents to police these hog confinements, to make sure that they're following code and they're within their parameters, okay? And then the USDA turns around, you know, if the state slaps a fine on them, USDA turns around and gives them $3 million to pay their fines. So the federal government's subsidizing these hog confinements so that they can profit off our land. And we as Fremont County taxpayers are the ones flipping the bill for it.
Okay, you mentioned this about a half hour ago, and that's new information. I want to dive into that with you, with our staff, and kind of follow that trail that you let out to see
This is,
at the federal level if there's something to be turned on or off.
okay, like at, the USDA has subsidized Fremont County alone in the last 21 years, $263 million. Okay, that covers commodity programs, crop insurance, disaster, and conservation. I said 263 million, and out of that subsidized money, those landowners and those corporations have only used in the conservation program 27 million. So all the rest of it's going in their pockets.
And a lot of them don't even live here.
And a lot of them don't even live
That's
here.
right, a lot of them. That's why I'm saying,
So
is it just?
what's happening right now is the federal government subsidizing these large farms, these industrial farms, hog farms, and very little of this is going to the family farms. Okay, out of that money is like under 100,000 gone to small production farms, hog operations. Very little. Maybe for a lagoon here or some assistance with putting in a lagoon or something like that. But all this money that is being subsidized to these companies it's going in their pocket. Because there's very little going towards conservation and the Clean Water Act. And we spend all this money on all this restoration for watershed restoration, Clean Water Act and all this stuff. And then we're turning around and they're just operating at will. And I have photos of these corporate farms. Knives, they're supposed to be knifing in their manure management plan and all that stuff's supposed to be all knifed in and no runoff and stuff like that. And it's not even being regulated. They're supposed to be certified. There's manure scattered up throughout the roadways of our county, and they pay a small fine at most, and then the federal government turns around and gives them $1 million to subsidize their fines and they operate at will.
You would put the EWG on this and with some of their data and some of their numbers.
That's where I got EWG.
Okay, I want to.
Are they reliable source?
Oh, I just say I just wanted to know what the source was, so
Okay.
we can get a hold of them too.
Yeah.
And then have and we can sit down and meet further.
And some of this information is on the USDA site too.
Thank you.
It's kind of shocking. Basically, we're just subsidizing these corporate farms with our tax dollars, and they're just operating at will. And that's what they did when they came into Fremont County, is they just keep putting up farms. These large corporations will come in and say, buy Steve's farm, or buy the farm right next to Steve's, and do whatever the heck he wants when Steve has his own business that he can't sustain because of the trespassing of the odor and all the other stuff, and it's trespassing. That is what's happening. These corporate farms are not like family farms that where we used to raise 100 head of hogs on dirt. This is thousands. Not to mention the costs for our county in transportation costs, DOT costs of repairing the roads and bridges and the green structures that we have to replace because of the overweight tanks, honey wagons, basically.
22 million hogs.
We have to replace those because of, I don't even know how many tons of manure they have on a tank, but all the equipment's overweight, oversized, and it's destroying our roads, and our roads can't handle it, our gravel roads can't handle it, our chip and seal roads can't handle it, so we have to go to asphalt. It's a trickle down effect, yet these guys from out of state, these corporate farms, are profiting from our county and driving our property values down, such as Jones, say that she wants to retire or her kids want to live there. They're not going to want to come back and live next to a hog confinement. So their family farm or century farm, whatever it is that they've had for 150 years is gone, and it goes to a corporate farm that
They'll come in and offer you $20,000 to live with the smell. Is that right?
So they say, oh, you can.
So let's have some further discussions on this, particularly with some agriculture staffers in my office. And I can't promise you an outcome in the end, though, but process what you heard and you know where to try to address this, okay?
I appreciate you listening, and I'm just not sure that the people at the federal level understand the local impact that it has on small businesses and the health of the kids the children in our area. Because there's over 75 county right now, there's probably over 75,000 hogs in our county, and we have 6,900 people. So that's like 514 square miles, and there's not enough property to sustain that type of manure management. So it's running off in the streams and
then
our groundwater.
Can I step in here?
Go ahead.
And then it just goes into the rivers and all the way down to the Gulf. I mean, when they talk about the Gulf, by New Orleans and stuff, the water is so polluted, and it's the nitrates that were just.
So do you think that the water quality bill that passed the legislature would have some nexus to address this in any way?
Look at the nation map, go to Missouri, that's pretty good water.
I haven't really,
That's
I
pretty
haven't
level
looked
there.
at it, so I
Yeah.
can't, yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for coming today and sharing your thoughts. Good to see you all. It's a good crowd. We're on our way now to Council Bluffs, to Rosemont Elementary, to meet with some kids. And yes, sir.
I just want to thank you for your Veterans Day you had, and I'm sorry we planned to be there, but the frigid weather kind of frosted us out.
That's
But
okay. You want to be comfortable.
appreciate what you do.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much, everybody.